My name is Charlotte, and I am 44 years old. At last, Sunday's family brunch. My mother smirked and said I should be grateful they even included me. That pity ran deeper than inheritance in this family. She said this in front of my two brothers, their wives, and my father. They all nodded in agreement. 20 minutes later, my attorney walked in carrying documents that changed everything. By the time he finished speaking, my mother's smirk had vanished, and the entire table sat in stunned silence, realizing they had catastrophically miscalculated who actually controlled the family wealth. Before I tell you what those documents revealed, drop a comment telling me where in the world you are watching from right now. Hit that like button and subscribe immediately, because this story is about what happens when a family underestimates the one person who actually mattered. I grew up in Newport, Rhode Island, in a family that had been wealthy for generations. My great-grandfather had made a fortune in shipping and textiles in the early 1900s. His son, my grandfather, had invested that fortune wisely in real estate and stocks. By the time I was born, my family was worth approximately $20 million, living in a historic mansion overlooking the ocean. I was the youngest of three children and the only daughter. My older brothers were Gregory and Marcus, 4 and 6 years older than me, respectively. From the moment I was born, the family dynamic was clear. My brothers were the important ones, the heirs who would carry on the family legacy. I was the afterthought, the daughter who would marry well and disappear into some other family. My grandfather was the patriarch who controlled everything. He was traditional and believed strongly in male primacy. He invested time and attention in my brothers, teaching them about business and finance. He barely acknowledged me except to criticize my appearance or comportment. I learned early that I was not valued in this family except as decoration. My father was weak and submissive to his own father. He went along with whatever my grandfather wanted, including the differential treatment of his children. He spent time with my brothers, teaching them about the family investments and businesses. He ignored me almost completely unless my grandfather demanded I be corrected for some perceived failing. My mother was the worst. She was not born into wealth but had married into it. She was obsessed with maintaining social status and appearances. She viewed me as a reflection on her, and I was always found wanting. Too plain, too quiet, too bookish, too serious. She criticized me constantly while praising my brothers excessively for the smallest accomplishments. My brothers absorbed the family attitude and treated me with casual cruelty. Gregory was arrogant and dismissive. Marcus was cold and indifferent. Neither protected me from our grandfather's harshness or our mother's constant criticism. They viewed me as lesser, just as everyone else did. Family gatherings were exercises in enduring their mockery and exclusion. I spent my childhood and adolescence trying unsuccessfully to earn my family's approval and affection. I studied hard, hoping academic achievement would matter. It did not. My grandfather said education was wasted on women. I tried to be helpful and pleasant. My mother said I was boring. I tried to be interested in what my brothers did. They told me to go away. Eventually, I stopped trying and withdrew into myself. When I was 16, my grandfather died unexpectedly of a heart attack. The family gathered for the will reading. My grandfather left the bulk of his estate to my father with provisions that it would eventually go to my brothers. I received a trust fund of $500,000 to be controlled by my father, until I turned 25 or got married, whichever came first. The message was clear. I was worth exactly $500,000 and nothing more. But something else happened at that will reading that nobody paid attention to except me. The attorney mentioned that my grandfather's sister, my great-aunt Dorothy, had included me specifically in her own estate planning. Great-aunt Dorothy was my grandfather's younger sister, who had never married and had lived quietly in Providence. The family rarely spoke of her or saw her. She was considered an eccentric spinster. After my grandfather's funeral, I did something my family would have mocked if they had known. I contacted Great-aunt Dorothy and asked if I could visit her. She seemed surprised, but pleased. I took the bus from Newport to Providence and spent an afternoon with her in her modest home. She was warm and intelligent and actually interested in talking with me. She asked about my life, my interests, my goals. No one in my family had ever done that. Great Aunt Dorothy told me she had always disliked her brother, my grandfather. She said he was a bully who treated women as property. She said she had watched him raise my father to be weak and my brothers to be arrogant. She said she had observed how the family treated me and found it despicable. She said she wanted to know me as a person, not as the discarded daughter of her nephew. I started visiting Great Aunt Dorothy regularly every weekend, taking the bus to Providence. My family barely noticed my absences. My mother assumed I was at the library or doing something equally dull. My father did not care where I was. My brothers did not notice I existed. Great Aunt Dorothy became the only family member who valued me for who I was. Great Aunt Dorothy was far smarter and more interesting than anyone realized. She had studied at Radcliffe College in the 1930s, when few women attended college. She had worked as a researcher and writer. She had invested her inheritance carefully and built her own considerable wealth separate from the family. She lived modestly, but was worth several $1 million that nobody in the family knew about. Over the years of our visits, Great Aunt Dorothy taught me about investing, property management, and financial independence. She shared her investment philosophy and strategies. She explained how she had built wealth through patient, intelligent investing, while everyone dismissed her as a poor spinster. She was mentoring me in ways my grandfather had mentored my brothers, except her mentorship was genuine and based on respect. When I turned 18 and went to college, Great Aunt Dorothy helped me choose schools and supported my decision to study finance and economics. My family thought this was pointless and that I should study something appropriate for a future wife. Great Aunt Dorothy encouraged me to pursue serious education and career preparation. She paid for extras that my trust fund controlled by my father did not cover. I graduated from Boston University with honors in finance. My family attended graduation but seemed annoyed by the ceremony. My brothers had graduated from elite schools and their graduations were major family celebrations. Mine was an obligation they barely tolerated. Great Aunt Dorothy attended alone and took me to an elegant dinner afterward, more proud of me than my own parents had ever been. After college, I got a job at an investment management firm in Boston. My family was dismissive. My mother said I was wasting time on a career I would abandon when I got married. My father said women did not understand finance. My brothers said I was probably someone's secretary regardless of my job title. Great Aunt Dorothy said she was proud of me and encouraged me to learn as much as possible. I worked hard and advanced steadily. I was promoted to portfolio manager by age 27. I managed substantial client portfolios and generated strong returns. I was good at my job and was building a successful career. My family never asked about my work or acknowledged my success. They continued treating me as the disappointing daughter who had not yet married well and produced children. Great Aunt Dorothy continued mentoring me. We had lunch monthly in Providence, where she lived. She taught me advanced investment strategies. She introduced me to her own advisors and attorneys. She treated me as her intellectual heir, teaching me everything she knew about building and preserving wealth. These lunches were the most valuable education I received. When I turned 28, Great Aunt Dorothy's health began declining. She had been diagnosed with aggressive cancer and was given perhaps a year to live. She asked me to visit her more frequently, and I did, taking time off work to spend long weekends with her. During these visits, she told me things that would change my life completely. Great Aunt Dorothy explained that she had been very strategic with her estate planning. She had watched my grandfather favor my brothers and had been disgusted. She had watched my parents continue that favoritism and had been appalled. She decided years ago that I would be her primary heir, that everything she had built would go to me, not to my father or brothers who had ignored her existence. She showed me her will and trust documents. She was leaving me her entire estate, approximately $8 million in investments and property. She was also leaving me something more valuable than money. She had spent decades quietly purchasing stock in various family businesses and properties. She had used shell corporations and nominees to hide her ownership. She now controlled approximately 30% of family assets that everyone thought were controlled entirely by my father and brothers. Great Aunt Dorothy explained her strategy with satisfaction. She had watched the family treat me terribly for years. She had decided that I deserved to inherit real power, not just money. The stock ownership she was transferring to me would give me effective control over family business decisions. My father and brothers collectively controlled 60%. I would control 30%. The remaining 10% was scattered among minor family members. With my 30%, I could block any major decision my father and brothers wanted to make. I was stunned by this revelation. I had known Great Aunt Dorothy was wealthy, but I had not known she had been quietly buying family business interests for decades. She explained she had done it carefully through intermediaries, so my grandfather and father never knew. She had paid fair market prices to minor family shareholders who needed cash. She had been building this position since my grandfather died, anticipating the day when she could transfer power to me. Great Aunt Dorothy made me promise several things. First, that I would not reveal her strategy until after her death. Second, that I would use this power wisely to protect myself and to check my brother's worst impulses. Third, that I would continue building my own wealth and independence separate from family. Fourth, that I would wait for the right moment to reveal what I controlled, letting my family continue underestimating me until that moment. Great Aunt Dorothy died 6 months later. I was with her at the end, holding her hand. My family did not visit her in her final days despite my urging them. They said they were too busy. They said she was not really close family. They said her death did not matter much. Their cruelty toward her even in death made me determined to honor her strategy perfectly. The will reading for Great Aunt Dorothy was sparsely attended. My parents came reluctantly. My brothers did not come at all, saying they had business meetings. Several of Great Aunt Dorothy's friends attended. The attorney read the will, which left the bulk of her estate to me, $8.3 million in investments and property. My parents looked mildly surprised, but not concerned. They assumed this was nice for me, but did not affect them. What the attorney did not read publicly was the private trust document that transferred 30% ownership in family businesses and properties to me. This was handled separately through Great Aunt Dorothy's attorneys. Only I knew about this transfer. The stock certificates and ownership documents were given to me privately. My family had no idea what had just happened. I followed Great Aunt Dorothy's instructions perfectly. I did not tell anyone about the business ownership transfer. I continued working at my investment firm. I continued living modestly in my Boston apartment. I continued attending family gatherings where I was dismissed and ignored. I let them continue underestimating me while I carefully managed my new power. Over the next several years, family dynamics continued as always. My parents and brothers controlled family businesses and properties, making decisions without consulting me or other minor shareholders. They paid themselves excessive salaries and bonuses. They made questionable investment decisions. They lived lavishly while telling other family members that money was tight and dividends would be small. I used my 30% ownership carefully and strategically. I attended shareholder meetings that my family did not know I was entitled to attend. I voted my shares through a corporate proxy, so my name did not appear. I blocked several particularly bad decisions my brothers wanted to make. They were confused about opposition but never traced it back to me. I was invisible to them, just as I had always been. I also continued building my own wealth. I was now senior portfolio manager at my firm, earning over $200,000 annually. I invested aggressively using strategies Great Aunt Dorothy had taught me. By age 35, I had my original inheritance of $500,000 plus Great Aunt Dorothy's, $8.3 million plus my own savings and investments. I was worth approximately $12 million personally, and I controlled another $30 million in family assets through my stock ownership. My family had no idea about any of this. They continued treating me as the disappointing daughter. My mother made constant remarks about my failure to marry. My father barely spoke to me. My brothers openly mocked me at family gatherings. They talked about family business decisions in front of me as if I was not there or would not understand. They assumed I was poor and irrelevant. Around this time, my father's health began declining. He was 72 and had heart problems. My brothers began maneuvering for control of family assets. Gregory and Marcus fought constantly about who should make decisions and who should get what. My father was too weak to control them. Family gatherings became tense with their barely concealed competition for power. My mother sided with Gregory, her favorite. She actively undermined Marcus playing favorites even among her sons. She seemed to enjoy watching them fight. She never included me in conversations about family business or inheritance. In her mind, I had already received my inheritance from Great Aunt Dorothy, and that was all I deserved. She had no idea what Great Aunt Dorothy had actually given me. At family gatherings, the dynamic was consistently humiliating. My brothers and their wives talked about expensive vacations and purchases. My mother bragged about Gregory's business acumen and Marcus's social connections. My father sat silent and weak. I sat at the end of the table, invisible and dismissed. They barely spoke to me except to make cutting remarks about my unmarried status or lack of children. The remarks became crueler as my mother aged. She seemed to resent my presence and wanted to hurt me. She would say things like I should be grateful they included me in family events at all, that I had contributed nothing to the family and deserved nothing, that I was lucky Great Aunt Dorothy had taken pity on me because otherwise I would have nothing. She said these things in front of everyone and no one objected. My father died 2 years ago. The will reading was tense because my brothers expected major inheritances. My father left the bulk of his estate to Gregory and Marcus equally. I received another small trust fund of $300,000. My mother retained a life estate in the family mansion and significant assets. The family business and properties were left to my brothers in equal shares. Except that was not quite accurate. My brothers received my father's 60% ownership, but I already owned 30% that they did not know about. Technically, my brothers now own 30% each, and I own 30%, but they did not know this. They thought they owned 45% each, and that the remaining 10% was scattered among minor shareholders. They believed they had complete control. My brothers immediately started making terrible decisions. They wanted to sell family properties to fund expensive personal projects. They wanted to take family businesses in risky directions to increase short-term profits. They stopped paying dividends to minor shareholders, keeping all profits for themselves. They paid themselves enormous salaries while family employees got nothing. I watched this behavior carefully. I continued blocking their worst decisions through anonymous proxy votes. They became increasingly frustrated that someone was opposing them, but never figured out who. They accused minor shareholders of causing problems. Those shareholders denied it truthfully, because they were not the ones voting against my brothers. It was me, but I remained invisible. Then came the brunch last Sunday that changed everything. It was my mother's 75th birthday celebration at the family mansion in Newport. My brothers and their wives attended. My mother's sister and several family friends were there. It was an elegant affair with catered food and expensive wine. I attended alone as always, wearing a simple dress, driving my modest car. During brunch, conversation turned to family business. Gregory announced they were selling the historic Newport mansion and other family properties, that they needed capital for new investments. My mother agreed this was wise. Marcus added that maintaining properties was expensive and selling was smart business. They discussed this as if it was decided, not even bothering to ask if other shareholders agreed. I sat quietly listening, knowing they legally could not sell these properties without shareholder approval, and that I controlled enough shares to block them. But I said nothing. I let them talk. Then my mother looked at me and made the comment that would trigger everything. My mother said with a cruel smile that I should just be grateful they even included me in family events, that I had contributed nothing to the family and had inherited nothing of value. That pity ran deeper than inheritance in this family, that they tolerated my presence out of obligation, not desire. She said this in front of everyone, expecting them to laugh and agree. Several people looked uncomfortable. My brothers smirked. Marcus said something about how some people were born to lead families and others were born to be pitied. Gregory added that at least I had Great Aunt Dorothy's charity to keep me from poverty. They all laughed. My mother looked satisfied that she had put me in my place. I looked at her calmly and said nothing in response. I simply pulled out my phone and sent a text message. The text said it was time and gave the address. I put my phone away and sat quietly while conversation continued around me. Everyone assumed I had been appropriately humiliated into silence. They moved on to other topics, dismissing me as always. 20 minutes later, the doorbell rang. My mother looked annoyed at the interruption to her birthday brunch. The housekeeper answered the door. A man in an expensive suit walked into the dining room carrying a leather briefcase. He introduced himself as Robert Chen's senior partner at a prominent Boston law firm. He said he was my attorney and needed to speak with everyone present about urgent family business matters. My family looked confused and annoyed. My mother demanded to know who had invited this attorney and why he was interrupting her birthday. Gregory told him this was a private family gathering and he should leave. Robert Chen said calmly that he was here at my request and that what he had to say was directly relevant to everyone at this table. He opened his briefcase and pulled out thick folders of documents. He said he had been instructed to present certain facts about family business ownership and decision-making authority, that there had been significant misunderstandings about who controlled what, that these misunderstandings needed to be corrected immediately before my brothers made decisions they were not actually authorized to make. Marcus told him to stop speaking in riddles and explain what he wanted. Robert Chen said he would be happy to explain with documentation. He handed everyone at the table a packet of papers. He asked them to turn to page 3, which showed a corporate ownership chart of family businesses and properties. The chart showed that my brothers each owned 30% of family businesses and properties. This matched what they believed. Then Robert Chen pointed to another entry showing that I owned 30%. Everyone looked confused. My mother said this must be an error, that I own nothing. Robert Chen said it was not an error and he could prove it. He handed out another set of documents. These showed the stock purchase history. Great Aunt Dorothy had quietly purchased 30% ownership in family businesses over 30 years. She had paid fair market value to minor shareholders who needed liquidity. She had used nominees and shell corporations to hide her identity. Upon her death 16 years ago, she had transferred all of this ownership to me through a private trust. My brothers looked stunned. My mother looked confused and angry. Marcus demanded to know if this was legal. Robert Chen said it was completely legal and properly documented. That Great Aunt Dorothy had every right to purchase stock from willing sellers. That she had transferred it legally to me. That I had been a 30% owner for 16 years, and they had simply never known it. Gregory asked why I had never mentioned this. Robert Chen answered for me. He said I had no obligation to announce my ownership, that I had been attending shareholder meetings and voting my shares appropriately, that my brothers had been too arrogant to notice opposition was coming from me, that they had assumed I was irrelevant when I actually controlled enough shares to block any decision requiring majority approval. My mother said this changed nothing, that my brothers still controlled 60% together. Robert Chen said that was arithmetically true, but legally complicated. He explained that many family business decisions required supermajority approval of 75% or unanimous consent of all shareholders above 10% ownership. That I could block most major decisions, including property sales, business restructurings, and excessive compensation. He then revealed something else that shocked everyone. I had spent the past 5 years quietly purchasing additional shares from minor family shareholders who were frustrated with my brother's mismanagement. I now owned 38%. My brothers owned 30% each. That left only 2% held by a distant cousin. I was now the largest individual shareholder, though my brothers together still had 60%. But here was the critical part. The family business bylaws written by my grandfather decades ago required that any shareholder with over 35% ownership had certain special rights, including veto power over property sales, and the right to call for removal of officers for mismanagement, and the right to demand financial audits. I now held all of these rights. My brothers had lost practical control of family businesses. The table was completely silent. Marcus looked like he might be sick. Gregory's face was red with barely controlled rage. My mother's expression had transformed from smug superiority to shocked confusion. The other guests looked uncomfortable, realizing they were witnessing a massive family power shift. Robert Chen continued. He said that over the past 2 years, my brothers had been paying themselves excessive salaries totaling over $800,000 annually, while paying minimal dividends to other shareholders, including me. He said they had made risky investments with family money that lost over $2 million. He said they had neglected property maintenance, causing value deterioration. He said all of this constituted mismanagement that justified removal from officer positions. He handed out another document. This was a formal notice that I was exercising my rights as a major shareholder to call for an extraordinary meeting to vote on removing Gregory and Marcus from all officer positions in family businesses, that the meeting would be held in 30 days, that given my 38% ownership, I only needed 12% more to win the vote. The distant cousin with 2% had already agreed to vote with me. I only needed 10% more from scattered minor shareholders. Robert Chen then revealed his final bombshell. He had been contacting these minor shareholders on my behalf. They were all frustrated with my brother's mismanagement and had agreed to vote with me. He had signed proxy agreements from shareholders totaling an additional 15%. I now controlled 53% of voting shares. I had majority control. I could remove my brothers from power immediately and they could not stop me. The silence was absolute. My mother looked like she had been slapped. Gregory stood up suddenly, his chair scraping loudly. He demanded to know if this was legal, if I could really do this. Robert Chen said calmly that everything was completely legal and properly documented, that I was exercising rights granted by the bylaws my own grandfather had written, that my brothers had mismanaged family assets, and I was taking necessary action. Marcus asked what I wanted. I spoke for the first time since Robert Chen had arrived. I said what I wanted was very simple. I wanted my brothers removed from all management positions immediately. I wanted professional managers hired to run family businesses properly. I wanted fair dividends paid to all shareholders. I wanted properties maintained and protected, not sold off for my brother's personal projects. I wanted the family to stop treating me like I was worthless. My mother found her voice finally. She said I could not do this, that I was destroying the family. I looked at her directly and said she had spent my entire life destroying my place in this family, that she had told me less than an hour ago that pity ran deeper than inheritance here, that I was showing her exactly how deep inheritance ran when someone had been smart enough to build real power while everyone underestimated her. I said Great Aunt Dorothy had been the wisest person in the family, that she had recognized my grandfather's cruelty and my parents' favoritism, that she had spent decades building a position that would eventually give me power to protect myself, that she had mentored me while my grandfather mentored my brothers, that her mentorship had been better because she actually cared about me as a person. I said I had waited 16 years for the right moment to reveal what I controlled, that I had let them continue dismissing me while I quietly built additional power, that I had watched them mismanage family assets and abuse their authority, that I had documented everything carefully, that now I was taking control because they had proven they could not be trusted. Gregory tried to argue. He said I did not understand business, that I would destroy everything. I pointed out that I was a senior portfolio manager at a major investment firm, that I managed over $500 million in client assets, that I had built my personal wealth to over $15 million through careful investing, that I understood business far better than brothers who had lost millions on bad decisions. Marcus tried a different approach. He said we could work this out, that I should not destroy family relationships over business disagreements. I said they had destroyed family relationships decades ago, when they chose to treat me as worthless, that I was not destroying anything, I was protecting family assets from their mismanagement, that they would still receive fair dividends as shareholders, they just would not control decisions anymore. My mother said I was being cruel and vindictive. I said I was being strategic and protective, that if I was vindictive, I could force a sale of all family assets and take my majority proceeds, that instead, I was preserving family businesses while removing managers who had proven incompetent, that this was mercy, not cruelty. Robert Chen said he needed to leave, but wanted to make clear what happened next. The shareholder meeting would occur in 30 days as required by law. Given my majority control, my brothers would be removed from officer positions. I would appoint new professional management. My brothers would remain shareholders entitled to dividends, but they would have no decision-making authority. This was final and legal. After Robert Chen left, the brunch ended in chaos. Guests left quickly uncomfortable with what they had witnessed. My brothers argued with each other and with me. My mother cried and blamed me for destroying the family. I sat calmly unmoved by their reactions. I had planned this carefully and executed it perfectly. Everything from here would proceed according to law and bylaws. The aftermath of that brunch was intense and ugly. My brothers hired attorneys to fight the shareholder meeting and vote. Their attorneys reviewed everything and concluded I was completely within my legal rights. The bylaws my grandfather had written gave me exactly the power I was exercising. My brothers had no legal grounds to block me. They tried to negotiate. Gregory offered to step back from some decisions if I would not remove him completely. I declined. Marcus offered to reduce his salary and improve management. I declined. They had proven they could not be trusted with power. Removing them was necessary to protect family assets. My mother begged me to reconsider. She said I was being cruel to my brothers who had worked hard for the family. I reminded her that I had worked hard too, but was dismissed and mocked. That I had built wealth and power while they insulted me. That Great Aunt Dorothy had worked hardest of all, quietly building the position that gave me control. That my mother's opinion of what I should do mattered as little now as my opinion had mattered to her my entire life. The shareholder meeting occurred exactly as planned. I held 53% of voting shares. I voted to remove Gregory and Marcus from all officer positions. I appointed a professional management company to run family businesses. I established fair compensation based on market standards. I directed that proper dividends be paid to all shareholders quarterly. The meeting lasted 40 minutes and ended with my brothers no longer controlling anything. My brothers threatened to challenge the results in court. Their attorneys advised them not to bother. Everything was legal and properly documented. They would lose in court and waste money on legal fees. They were defeated and had to accept it. Family relationships deteriorated completely. My brothers stopped speaking to me entirely. My mother told relatives I had staged a coup and destroyed family unity. I was fine with this. These relationships had been terrible my entire life. Losing their pretense of inclusion was not actually a loss. What did matter was that family assets were finally managed properly. The professional management company stabilized businesses that my brothers had mismanaged. Properties were maintained and increased in value. Wise investments were made. Within 2 years, family assets had grown from 30 million to 40 million. Every shareholder benefited, including my brothers, who received much larger dividends than under their own mismanagement. I also continued building my own wealth independently. I was promoted to senior vice president at my investment firm. I managed over 1 billion in client assets. I was respected professionally in ways my family had never respected me. My personal net worth exceeded 20 million. I was financially independent and powerful. My mother continued living in the family mansion under her life estate. She was bitter and angry about losing family control. She told anyone who would listen that I had stolen from my brothers. This was absurd. I had legally exercised my ownership rights. I had not stolen anything. She simply could not accept that the daughter she dismissed was actually the most capable person in the family. 5 years after the brunch revelation, my mother's health declined rapidly. She was dying of cancer and had perhaps weeks left. My brothers called me and said she wanted to see me before she died. I agreed to visit, though I was not sure why she wanted this. I drove to Newport and entered the mansion where I had grown up being dismissed and insulted. My mother was in her bedroom, clearly very ill. My brothers left us alone. She looked at me with an expression I could not quite read. She said she owed me an apology, that she had been wrong to treat me the way she did my entire life, that she had favored my brothers because that was how she was raised to value children, that she recognized now that I was actually the smartest and most capable of her children, that she was sorry she had not seen it sooner. I listened without responding immediately. Part of me wanted to accept this apology. Part of me was still angry about decades of cruelty. I finally said I appreciated the apology, but it did not change the past. That I had built a good life despite her treatment, not because of it. That I wished she had been a better mother, but I had moved forward without her approval. She asked if I could forgive her. I said honestly that I was not sure. That forgiveness might come with time, but could not be demanded or rushed. That she had caused real damage that apologies did not immediately heal. That I would think about it, and that was all I could promise. She died 2 weeks later. I attended the funeral with mixed feelings. I was not sad exactly. I was relieved that her cruelty was over. I was sad that we had never had a real mother-daughter relationship. I was satisfied that she finally acknowledged the truth before she died. In her will, my mother left the mansion equally to all 3 children. My brothers wanted to sell it immediately. I insisted we keep it as a family asset managed by our professional management company. We compromised by converting it to an events venue that generated rental income while preserving the historic property. My brothers and I maintained a distant but functional relationship. We attended board meetings as shareholders. We were civil to each other. We were not close and never would be, but we had reached a working arrangement that protected family assets while minimizing personal interaction. 10 years after the brunch where Robert Chen revealed my ownership and power, I reflected on everything that had happened. My life had turned out far better than anyone in my family had predicted or wanted. I had built genuine wealth and success through intelligence and determination, while they dismissed me as worthless. The family business and properties were worth over $60 million now, under professional management. My personal net worth exceeded $30 million from my career and investments. I had achieved financial independence and security that my brothers, despite their advantages, had not managed as effectively. I had also built a meaningful life outside of family. I had genuine friendships with people who valued me for who I was. I had professional respect in the investment management industry. I served on several nonprofit boards where my expertise was appreciated. I had hobbies and interests that fulfilled me. I did not need family approval because I had built my own life. I never married and never had children. This was not a tragedy or failure as my family had framed it. It was a choice that suited my nature and priorities. I was content with my life as it was. I did not need to conform to others' expectations. My brothers eventually acknowledged grudgingly that I had been right to remove them from management. Family assets had grown significantly under professional management in ways they never achieved. They received much larger dividends as passive shareholders than they had ever paid themselves as executives. They still did not like me or respect me emotionally, but they could not deny the results. I thought often about Great Aunt Dorothy and what she had given me, not just money and stock ownership, though those were valuable. She had given me something more important. She had given me mentorship, respect, and strategic vision. She had taught me to think long-term and plan carefully. She had shown me that being underestimated could be an advantage if you used it strategically. Her decision to spend decades quietly buying family business ownership was brilliant. She could have told my grandfather what she was doing and created conflict. Instead, she worked quietly and patiently, building a position that would eventually give me power after she was gone. She understood that power revealed too early could be blocked or countered. Power revealed at the right moment was unstoppable. The timing of my revelation at that brunch was equally strategic. I had waited 16 years after inheriting the ownership position. I had waited until my brothers had thoroughly proven their mismanagement. I had waited until I had built additional shares to ensure majority control. I had waited until my mother said something so cruel that my response would be understood as justified. The timing made all the difference. I wrote about my experience occasionally on financial blogs and forums without naming family members. I shared lessons about patience strategy and using other people's underestimation as cover while building real power. Many people responded with similar stories of being dismissed by families and proving them wrong through careful planning. The key lessons I emphasized were these: first, other people's opinion of you matters far less than your actual capabilities and results. My family thought I was worthless, but their opinion did not change reality. Second, being underestimated is an advantage if you are building something meaningful. My family ignored me completely, which gave me freedom to build power without interference. Third, patience and strategic timing are crucial. I could have revealed my ownership immediately after Great Aunt Dorothy died, but waiting 16 years until the perfect moment made the revelation far more effective. Fourth, documentation and legal structure matter enormously. Everything I did was completely legal because Great Aunt Dorothy had structured it properly. Fifth, professional help is essential for complex actions. Robert Chen and his law firm ensured everything was done correctly and legally. I could not have executed this effectively without professional attorneys who understood corporate law. Sixth, having at least one person who believes in you makes enormous difference. Great Aunt Dorothy was that person for me. Her mentorship and confidence sustained me through years of family cruelty. My message to others in similar situations was clear. Do not waste energy seeking approval from people who refuse to give it. Focus instead on building real capability and power. Document everything carefully. Structure things legally. Wait for the right moment to reveal what you have built. And when that moment comes, execute decisively without apology or mercy. I also emphasize the importance of forgiveness when appropriate, but not automatic. My mother apologized before she died. I appreciated the apology, but could not immediately forgive decades of cruelty. Forgiveness might come with time or might not. Either way was acceptable. I did not owe anyone instant forgiveness just because they finally acknowledged their wrongdoing. The story of my brunch revelation became somewhat famous in family business circles. It was used as a case study about the importance of understanding ownership structures and not assuming you have control just because you have always had control. It illustrated how quiet shareholders could accumulate power over time without anyone noticing. Looking back at my mother's cruel comment that pity ran deeper than inheritance in our family, I appreciated the irony. She had meant that they included me out of pity because I had nothing of value to inherit. The truth was exactly opposite. I had inherited the real power through Great Aunt Dorothy's strategic brilliance. My brothers had inherited positions in authority, but not actual control. Inheritance had run deeper than any of them realized, just not in the direction they assumed. Have you ever been dismissed by family members who thought you were worthless or incapable? How did you respond when people underestimated your abilities or intelligence? Would you have waited as long as I did to reveal your power, or would you have acted sooner? Share your experiences and thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, or taught you something valuable about patience strategy and family dynamics, please hit that like button and subscribe for more true stories about being underestimated and proving everyone wrong. Share this video with anyone who needs to hear that family opinion does not determine your worth, that quiet strategic planning beats loud arrogance, and that the person everyone dismisses might actually hold all the real power. Thank you so much for listening to my story today. I hope it reminds you that being underestimated is an opportunity if you are patient and strategic, that legal structure and documentation are your friends, and that the best revenge is building real power while everyone assumes you are powerless. Build your success quietly and reveal it at exactly the right moment for maximum impact.